In our manufacturing environments, there's always more information being brought to us, more tasks, more information, more what I should be doing. And sometimes that can get a little overwhelming. And we just need to focus a little bit more. And when, on this podcast, when I get a really great guest, sometimes we just got to bring them back. And I'm welcoming Kathy Miller back to the show since episode 101. How you doing, Kathy?
I'm doing great, Trevor. Thanks so much for letting me come back.
Well, we had to. I've had great feedback on your first book, Steel Toes and Stilettos. And now you have a new book, More is Better.
Yes.
And that is a title which caught me. But just for our listeners, a little background on you. You are in the Women Manufacturing Hall of Fame. You've worked in manufacturing for so many years, GM, Delphi, Rolls-Royce Defense. What was that one all about?
I was the global assembly test and manufacturing manager for all of the defense plants worldwide for Rolls-Royce.
That's cool. And I didn't know this whole connection from Rolls-Royce and defense all came together.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've had such a depth of experience in manufacturing and an advocate for other women, which we need more in manufacturing. We need those different spaces.
Mhm.
And we just need more information, right? But sometimes that more gets to be so much. You've
Mhm.
kind of got some concepts around what you've learned from your own growth in manufacturing to your professional coaching, to your speaking. How is more better for a supervisor in manufacturing, Kathy?
Well, I wanted the title to be memorable and a little bit intriguing to people. Usually people say less is more, and there's this whole movement towards simplification. But more is better is a little bit of a play on words, and it's an acronym. It's about leading operations with meaning, optimism, and relationships for excellence. So that's
Hmm.
my framework for the cultures that really drive performance in manufacturing.
One of the things that I was reading, your book has, I've read some of the preview on it and I've read some of the chapters that you sent me. It's in the mail, it's coming because it just came out. So I just ordered it. So I don't have it to show here. But what is the main problem that it's solving? Like, what are you really, when you went out to write this?
Yeah, so I went back to school recently after I left Rolls-Royce and got a master's degree in applied positive psychology.
Mm.
And so I got access to leadership researchers and organizational research. All of that science really backed what I had learned for 40 years in high performing leadership roles. So what I'm trying to solve here is I'm trying to take the science of what researchers in leadership say works through their research and make it accessible to manufacturing leaders at all levels. So I want to translate that scientific talk to real talk and usable tools for busy leaders who
Yeah.
may not have time to go through the research. Quite honestly, a lot of that focuses on the people that I call on the carpet. And there is
Mm.
not a lot out there for people who lead teams on concrete. So I want to really
Yeah.
translate that research into the environment that I know so well.
A lot of books are written for the carpet, the office instead of the concrete. The stronger leaders are usually out on the floor more, right? So we need those tools for the concrete. I read some of the stories around the shutdown and different ideas. What's a story that you have connected to a tools to give the listeners a bit of a preview of the value of reading your book?
Yeah. One of the things I used to do with people was incorporate a little bit of levity in high stress situations, which manufacturing is. It never
Hmm.
stopped. We measure things in seconds, even. And a lot of times things are pretty intense. So I would try to build on the idea of high quality connections, even when I was at a VP level. And one of the elements is play. For example, I have a couple of superpowers. One is seeing potential in people that they don't see in themselves and giving them an opportunity to explore
Hmm.
those. The second one is I can be in a 1 million square foot facility and be the only person who notices when someone doesn't have their safety glasses on. Yes, it's a superpower. I had a really difficult person who every time I went by, he didn't have his safety glasses on. I'm the director of operations, and I would ask him to put them on, and he would tell me, no, there's nothing here that can hurt my eyes. We talked about shop rules and how much I cared about his eyes, and he just wasn't having it. So I pretended to trip over his chair and stick my fingers in his eyes. And I said, now, wouldn't you feel awful if I was the reason you hurt your eyes today? And he just looked at me and started laughing because it was so playful and ridiculous, but it was very effective. After that, every time I walked by him, he had his glasses on. I'd wink at him or wave at him. And we created a high quality connection from what could have been a
Mm,
really tense and unfortunate outcome, right?
yeah.
So that's one of the stories in the book.
I like the ridiculous. Like it's okay to be ridiculous sometimes.
You got to take your job seriously, but not yourself so much. And people relate to
Mm.
that.
Take your job seriously, but not yourself so much.
Hmm.
That's a good one
Hmm. That was my
because
philosophy in leadership. So I felt very compelled with how every operation I ever ran was making the world a better place, even tens of thousands of rubber parts every day. I wasn't ever hung up on my title. I was a person doing a job, and I needed to support the people who were actually building the products and adding value. So I was fine with a little humor in place so long as it was appropriate and led us to a better place in terms of people feeling psychologically safe and
Mhm.
connected.
That's really good advice because when I work with leaders, sometimes it's the balance of we got to be professional. And sometimes people are just so professional that people have a harder time connecting. Right. And
Yes,
it's really hard to explain that. So it's hard for people to understand, okay, I could be a little more playful, but I want people to take me seriously. Your example in the glasses is perfect, right? Because you're not walking away from this conversation without you wearing your glasses. Now, how we
100%.
get there, you chose your own path on how to get there. So you were able to not be serious to get the outcome that you needed, which was to make sure that person's eyes didn't get hurt.
Right, exactly. So it wasn't like I was a big jokester all the time, but it was definitely a tool I had. My claim to fame is transforming manufacturing using lean tools. It's a huge cultural transformation too, from that traditional command and control to
Mm,
being very inclusive. When you're trying to shift norms, which are the behavioral patterns of how work gets done in different companies, it's really important that you are a leader that is approachable, seen as legitimate and fair, and someone that people can relate to. Very distant. You walk around in three-piece suits telling people what to do. It's really difficult to shift those norms and those behaviors. So, humor was just one of the small tools
yeah.
that I would use, but there all kinds of tools, but most of it's about being present, actively showing up, supporting people with things that
Hmm.
are difficult for them to get their job done and help in terms of including them in the solution and actually
Hmm.
helping fix problems. And for the most part, that's all free.
Just yesterday, we're talking, Diana and I, my partner in business here, and my wife, and we're talking about what we do at Manufacturing Greatness. And really, what we do is we leverage resources you already have, which is basically what you just said,
Yeah.
right? Like, you're not saying, hey, you need to spend more money on this or do this training, or it's like, hey, maybe we could just take a more playful approach in a serious situation to get the outcome we're looking for. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what you're also like. I don't look at this concrete or carpet either, because the tools that you're used to using, because you worked in the field, you're not a pure academic, even
Mm.
though you kind of are because you've published 2 books, but because you've lived it, these are tools that you can use at every level.
Absolutely. And at the end of every chapter, in More for Better, I actually have a call out section that says how you can do a little more today. If you're a
Hmm.
frontline leader, a middle manager, or an executive leader. So it's tied to the
Mm.
content of the chapter, and it's something you can literally go out and do as soon as you close the book.
when you open
Mhm.
up that and you read the end of that chapter and you say, okay, this is where I fit in. This is something
Yeah,
that I can do. And
absolutely.
so for my book, Manufacturing Greatness, I was thinking the same thing. They went to the end of the chapter. How do you do that? But I like your respect for the audience of just like, hey, I see you. These are some different areas. I've got till May of 2027. So I've got some time to think this through. But really, we solve similar problems. And I think hearing your stories makes it more memorable for people. So take us through the acronym so that the listeners can have a sneak preview.
M is about meaning, right? It's connecting your work to a higher purpose and helping you find meaning in your work. As a leader, being aware that people have different ways to find meaning in their work. It walks through all those mechanisms and just helps make you aware of the fact that people need community and connectedness and a chance to contribute from a level of competence, right?
Mm.
So I won't go down a rabbit hole with stories. I have so many stories.
Oh no, we got to no throw a little story in each one. We'll make time. Well, you got great stories. Listeners need to hear it. Let's hear it.
So I do a lot of group coaching. I teach the scientific
Hmm.
concepts and the stories that bring them to life. Just this week, I was with one of my group coaching sessions, and one of the participants said, Kathy, I have to tell you what I did right after our last session. I'm like, okay, let me hear it.
Ooh.
She had a person on her team who had just come back from maternity leave. And she had been out for a year. In that time, everything had changed. The leadership changed,
Mm-mm.
the strategy changed, like a lot of things changed. So it changed a lot of things about her returning employees' world. She was very disgruntled, this returning employee. My coachee said she thought they were going to have to go down the discipline path because she was unhappy and disruptive. And so she said, Kathy, I just sat her down and said, hey, I know all these things have changed and you don't seem happy. Can you tell me what you find meaningful about your work here? And the lady was taken aback and welled up a little bit with tears and was able to articulate what she had found meaningful in her previous version of the role. And so
Hmm.
they were able to co create the job and the elements of it that were meaningful to her. Within a couple of weeks, she was back to contributing at her high performing level.
Mm-hmm.
So, realizing that people don't want to spend time doing things that aren't seen as valuable or contributing or meaningful to them is something that we can all do with a little bit of active listening and
Mm-hmm.
some creativity around how we design jobs. So that's meaning. Go ahead.
So as I say, the meaning ties into just being curious, like that whole curiosity, right? I just so appreciate there is one less progressive discipline which is not effective in manufacturing. In my book, I write about it being a scapegoat to deeper
Mhm.
conversations. What your friend did is that they were able to go in and just ask a good question and get more curious. Because if we want to change the behavior, we think progressive discipline, well, yeah, I just got to let them know this is the way it is. No, like you didn't have to do that at all. Look at the conversation that you and her had to preface the next conversation, how much time you saved on meaningless progressive discipline, and then how much connection and retention you built into that company. Fantastic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And by showing a little bit of compassion, she was able to turn the situation around. Sometimes people think compassion's really soft and it means that you can't hold people accountable. But that story demonstrates she was holding someone accountable, but
Mm-hmm.
using the tools of meaning and compassion, which is an element under R of relationships. So, another thing under meaning, and I love this so much, is helping people understand how their work connects to the bigger picture or making the world a better place. Over years, manufacturing, for good reason, has segmented work into smaller chunks because it's
Mm-hmm.
more productive, it's easier to train people, it's, more repeatable from a quality standpoint. But unfortunately, that has also made people disconnected from the final product or understanding
Mm.
why they're doing what they're doing. This is a great example from Rolls-Royce. We did a lot of machining for aircraft engines, making wheels and discs and high precision
Mm-hmm. High
machining.
precision.
You may or may not see the end product depending on what department you worked in or that sort of thing. So one day we invited a high ranking official to the auditorium and took every single person off the concrete and put them in a conference room. This military official showed them a video of a fighter jet coming onto an aircraft carrier, and the arresting wire broke and the plane careens off the end of the aircraft carrier, and then all of a sudden it rises right from the end of the ship, and he's like, "That's you, Rolls-Royce, you did that. Every one of you in here saved that pilot and saved that plane and contributed to national security." And like we were like all like,
Bam.
right? And and
Yeah.
and the energy
Wow.
that drove that
Mm-hmm.
simple 30-second video, right? Showing people that yes, making sure all the parameters and the specifications are met on these are important, and this is why. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
part of American security, right?
That leader was able to tie that into meaning.
Amazing.
Uh,
So anyhow, I've got rubber part stories and so many, but really helping people understand that by what they're doing every day, it's important. It's making the world a better place
yeah.
is one of the tools in your arsenal that again is free.
Yeah.
Someone just bring them in and tell stories.
Yeah.
So that's
Fantastic.
the M. O is optimism. And optimism, is about realizing that when bad things happen, they're temporary, they're not, all pervasive, and that they're
Mm-hmm.
solvable. So optimism a lot of times gets a bad rap because people think it's about being cheerful and having rose-colored glasses. Not that there's anything wrong with having a sunny disposition, but optimism is about being able to look at bad things that happen and know that you're going to get through it. And
Mm,
that's so important for leadership in manufacturing because there's just so many challenges on a daily basis. And when you're the leader, you want to really project that optimism that that's okay. That's what happened here. We're not going to shame and blame, but we're
yeah.
going to figure out why did this happen and how can we fix it and prevent it from happening again. Giving that space for people to feel safe and help
Mm-hmm.
solve problems leads to amazing results because people know that they're not going to be in trouble for bringing up issues. They're going to accelerate things that lead you towards continuous improvement and operational excellence. So, optimism is again another tool. It's a skill that can be developed. There's lots of books on it, particularly by Dr. Marty Seligman, who's the father of positive psychology.
Mm-hmm.
So you can take a baseline and know where you land in terms of optimism, and then there's tools to help you build those skill sets that
Yeah.
are so important. You can't let obstacles weigh you down.
It's a skill. It's not an attitude, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
guess I shouldn't say it's not an attitude. It is a skill though. And
Yeah.
I appreciate for the listeners out there is like it doesn't mean you just go walk in and all the presses are down and then you're telling everybody it's okay. Because then that's not optimism to me. It's kind of like, okay, presses are down. We don't have to get like opposite of your other story with the safety glasses. You kind of joke around about that. It's a serious situation. And in here, it's just kind of like, it's not the end of the world, but I'm going to provide you and me with some light of like, how are we going to get through this? And we are going to get
Absolutely.
through this. And it is a moment in time and it is going to pass and we're going to be coming better out of this. But right now, we need to focus on X, Y, and Z. I appreciate, Kathy, of what you add to us thinking about like, hey, we have to be intentional, right?
We do. We do.
Intentional about it.
And it's about realistic optimism. It's not
Mm-hmm.
about denying that there's a problem. It's not about that, but it's about, okay, what's the current situation? What's within our control to change? How do
Yeah.
we fix things? How do we get the resources and support to fix things? And how do we make sure it doesn't happen again?
Yeah. Yeah.
Regardless of who's involved.
Yeah, and I also appreciate that. It's not about the who and getting the blame and the progressive discipline again. Like you and I are on the same page there. Let's just figure out, hey, this is a situation. It's also confusing for people. If you're positive, if you're optimistic all the time about everything, it can get overused. I just really appreciate another person writing about that, teaching that. We need to know how to do that. So thank you on the optimism.
No, you're welcome. And there's so many health benefits
Heck
and
yeah.
cultural benefits to having an optimistic outlook. It's not that bad things aren't going to happen because they are.
Yeah.
We live in an
Yeah.
imperfect world and there are so many complexities to manufacturing that there's bound to be issues. But it's looking at those and knowing that we're going to get past this realistically.
Yeah. You got a great balance there. So we got the R,
R is about relationships.
relationships.
Yeah. And leaders who build high performing teams are all about relationships with everybody, right? Regardless
Hmm.
of rank, role, those sorts of things. They're built on high quality connections. High quality connections are a concept that have been widely studied by Dr. Jane Dutton, Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, and there are those brief moments in time where positive energy is exchanged
Mm,
between two people, regardless of their rank in the role. We have tremendous opportunity to create trust and collaboration within the workplace. All relationships are built on these high quality connections. You can't always have long term, deep relationships with everyone in your organization if you've got 8,000 people in it.
no.
You just can't. But what you can do is you can walk through your plant and smile at people and learn their names and, shake their hands, thank them for working safely. So that's one of the mechanisms that's very free, but you have to be aware of some things. Your thoughts, framing things in such a way that people feel valued and seen, not being judgy. Your feelings, really allowing yourself to experience positive emotions
Mhm. F word, feelings.
and realizing that every day in manufacturing something great happens. We take all these raw materials and we make something useful for the world, experiencing that joy and curiosity and those sorts of things. And then our actions, right? Offering help to people, smiling as we're walking down the hall as opposed to being lost in our own thoughts. And then, relationships like compassion are important, grit, perseverance, all of those characteristics help build relationships, create collaboration, trust, clarity within an
Mhm.
organization. They create positive spirals of energy, which we need.
In manufacturing, when I go to different plants, clarity is just this more word I hear more often, right? And it's leaders saying, I don't know how more clear we can be. And then I hear teammates like, I'm just not clear, right? And it's just kind of like the more you can lean into that relationship. What I really took away listening to you, Kathy, is the connection between your thoughts and relationships. And that's something I clued in when you said that. It's like when you're approaching someone, it's like, what are you thinking about? And
Mhm.
that will drive your smile. That will drive
Yes.
how you ask the question. And if you're thinking, oh boy, there's Kathy on the sub machine, I don't know if she's going to bring this up again. And then you go over there with that attitude of how you're going to shut down this complaint. Well, that's probably not going to lead to a great relationship. But if you're just thinking, hey, I just need to be present for a moment. It's not Kathy's fault that, we short shipped yesterday and I got to deal with the customer.
I'm sure that Kathy did not want to be dealing with scrap parts or a process that
Mm,
wasn't working. And I think one of the most important actions we can do to build relationships that is also free to us, but a skill and but needs to be developed is active listening.
yeah. We just got to close our mouth, use our 2 ears just a
Yeah.
little bit more. That ties back to what you said, which is the thoughts, right?
Approach
Can,
things with curiosity.
and can I kind of keep my thought on you right now?
Yes,
No,
as
that
opposed to finishing your sentence, solving your problem, knowing what you're going to say. Can I really just focus with curiosity on the message you're bringing to me?
fantastic.
The last E is excellence, and it's the outcome. So, meaning,
Mhm.
optimism, and relationships are the inputs. If you learn how to use the tools and understand what they look like on the concrete, which may look a little bit different than, traditional textbooks about leadership. Excellence is going to follow. It's going to be an outcome, both in culture and performance.
Beautiful. Well, let's see that book because mine's in the mail,
Oh,
just like your check.
more is better. It has the subtitle of Leading Operations with Meaning, Optimism, and Relationships for Excellence. And I have to tell you, I love this cover. It was designed for me by a very good friend who I met at Penn in applied positive psychology. I love that it's bright
Oh,
and
yes.
cheery and kind of says it all. More is
Yeah,
better
and it's got the
with the
gears
gears.
on there connecting, and also the whole operations, right? Thank you for contributing. You and I are going down a similar path, really writing for people on the concrete at every level. And that's what I appreciate
Yes.
about what you do too, right? Really looking at that audience because if we're all using those tools together, it's just going to be more common language. We're going to know how we're approaching each other. And it excites me. So thank you, Kathy. And
Yeah, it's a competitive advantage. It's not just
yes.
about soft side of things. It's
Yeah.
really a competitive advantage. When you create cultures characterized by these things, you're going to attract and retain talent. That's big.
Retention. I'm going to leave the link to purchase your book in the show notes. But for listeners who just want to follow you, maybe get some more content, how do they best connect with you, Kathy?
Yeah, the best way is to reach me on LinkedIn. I'm Kathy Miller, MBA ACC. There's lots of Kathy Millers in the world, so I'm that one. Or you can go to my new website, moreforleaders.com, and the four is the number four. There's a link to contact me there. If you go to moreforleaders.com, there's actually a more mentor on there where you can talk to the book and ask questions of the book. So you're a first
Ooh.
line supervisor, you've got two people not getting along, you pull out the website and say, how would you suggest that I approach XYZ situation? So that's very accessible to
Mm.
everybody who has a phone or a
Yeah.
computer. And it's like having a little coach Kathy in your pocket that relies on the research of giants.
Fantastic. Kathy, thanks so much for coming on the show again. You're awesome. And I just appreciate you keep pouring into our community. Thank you so
More.
much.
Thanks, Trevor.